"Get out now or I am calling the police," my daughter screamed on the most intense, stormy afternoon I have ever seen in my life. Sarah was standing in the doorway of the house, that house she believed was hers, with a face full of fury and contempt. Her words cut through the wet air like thunder. I was 61 years old, and I never imagined this moment would come, the moment when my own blood would throw me out onto the street as if I were garbage. The rain was falling with such force that the water bounced off the pavement. My clothes were flying across the front yard, getting soaked in the mud. A blouse that I had sewn myself 20 years ago lay thrown next to the rose bush. A dress I wore at her wedding fell into the biggest puddle. My shoes, the only good ones I had, were thrown against the fence without any care. Michael, my son-in-law, was by her side filming me with his phone. He was laughing. Both of them were laughing, as if kicking an elderly mother out into the storm was the perfect entertainment for a boring afternoon, as if my pain were a joke, as if my 61 years of life were worth absolutely nothing. The neighbors began to come out. First it was Brenda, the woman from across the street peeking through the window with her eyes wide open. Then Mr. Wilson from number 14, standing on his porch with his arms crossed. Others opened their doors just a little, enough to look without getting involved. Everyone saw, everyone knew what was happening, and nobody said anything. Because when you are an old woman, when you have lost your voice in this society, people assume you did something wrong. They assume you were a burden, that you were annoying, that you deserved it. This house is mine. Mom, mine. You have nothing here. Nothing, Sarah kept screaming from the entrance. Her voice was pure poison. Each word fell on me like stones. But I did not cry. I did not beg. I did not kneel as she expected. I simply began to gather my things with the most calm I could muster, even though my hands were trembling so much I could barely hold anything. The water ran down my neck, down my face. My clothes stuck to my body. I felt the cold down to my bones. I put what I could into a plastic bag I found lying next to the gate. A blouse, a pair of pants, a sweater that was useless now because it was completely soaked. My shoes made noise as I walked on the wet cement. Michael kept filming. I heard his laugh again, that mocking laugh that would haunt me in my nightmares for weeks. Sarah looked at him from time to time, seeking his approval, smiling when he looked back at her. They were a perfect team, united in cruelty, united in ingratitude. When I finished picking up the last item, when there was nothing left to rescue from the muddy garden, I turned toward them. Sarah was standing in the entrance with her arms crossed, her chin up, looking at me as if I were a stranger, as if I had not spent entire nights taking care of her when she had a fever, as if I had not worked 3 jobs to pay for her college, as if I had not given up my own life to build hers. Then I did something she did not expect. I smiled. It was a small, quiet, almost sweet smile, and I said only 2 words with a calm that not even I knew I had inside me. "No problem." Sarah frowned. That confused her. She expected tears. She expected drama. She expected me to fall to my knees and beg for forgiveness for having existed, for having been her mother, for having taken up space in her precious house. But I did not do it. I simply turned around and began to walk in the rain, moving away from that door, from that house, from that daughter I no longer recognized. The water kept falling hard. My steps were slow but firm. I did not look back. I did not give them the pleasure of seeing me broken. I walked to the corner, where I hailed a taxi. The driver looked at me strangely, seeing my state, but he asked nothing. He just took me to a small hotel 2 miles away, a cheap one, the kind where they do not ask many questions and accept cash. I paid for 3 nights. I went up to the room, I locked the door, and only then, when I was completely alone, did I allow myself to tremble. I sat on the bed and looked at my wet, wrinkled, tired hands, hands that worked a lifetime, hands that built everything Sarah believed was hers, because she did not know the truth. Nobody knew. Not Sarah, not Michael, not even the family that adored her so much and saw me as an insignificant shadow. Everyone believed the lie that my daughter had achieved everything alone, the lie that that house, that wealth, that bright future were the fruit of her effort. But I knew the truth, and that truth was my power. I took my phone out of my soaked bag and dialed a number I had saved months ago, a number I hoped I would never have to use, a number that represented the plan I had prepared in silence, with fear, with pain, but also with determination. They answered on the second ring. "Attorney Christine Moore," said the professional voice on the other end of the line. "This is Emily Ross," I replied with a firm voice. "I think it is time to activate everything we have prepared." There was a brief silence. Then I heard a sigh of understanding. "Are you sure, Mrs. Emily? Once we start this, there is no turning back." I looked out the hotel window. The rain kept falling. I thought about Michael's laugh. I thought about Sarah's screams. I thought about my clothes lying in the mud. I thought about the neighbors watching without doing anything. I thought about all the years I sacrificed, all the times I swallowed my pride, all the humiliations I endured in silence. "I am completely sure," I said. "Do it all, exactly as we planned." "Perfect. Tomorrow morning, I will present the documents to the judge. In less than 72 hours, everything will be in motion." I hung up the phone and left it on the bed. Outside, the storm was beginning to calm down. The sky was still dark, but the rain was less violent. I took off my wet clothes and got under the hot shower of the hotel. The warm water ran over my body, washing away the mud, the cold, but not the pain. As the steam filled the bathroom, I closed my eyes and breathed deeply. A few hours later, the police would knock on my daughter's door. Only they would not be coming for me. They would be coming to arrest the criminals who invaded my house. To understand how I reached that moment, I must go back 21 years, to the day my world collapsed completely and I had to rebuild it with my own hands. I was 40 years old when Alfred, my husband, died in a traffic accident. It was a Tuesday morning. He left early for work as always and never returned. A truck hit him on the highway. He died instantly, the doctors told me, as if that made it hurt less. As if knowing he did not suffer could fill the void he left in my life. Sarah was 11 years old. She was a thin girl with big, frightened eyes who cried every night asking for her dad. I slept on the floor next to her bed, holding her hand, telling her everything would be okay. But the truth is that I did not believe it myself. Alfred was a bus driver. He earned just enough to support us. We did not have significant savings. We did not have properties. We had nothing more than a small monthly rent of $500 that barely covered food. The insurance company gave us $10,000 for his death, $10,000 for a whole life, for a husband, for a father, for the man I had loved since I was 18. Everyone told me to use that money carefully, to save it, to make it last. But I knew that $10,000 lasts nothing when you have a daughter to raise, rent to pay, food to buy, clothes needed. I knew that if I did not do something different, that money would disappear in less than a year, and we would end up on the street. So I made a decision that would change everything. I used $5,000 to buy an industrial sewing machine and material to work. I dedicated myself to sewing. I worked from 5 in the morning until 11 at night, 7 days a week. I sewed school uniforms, party dresses, alterations, anything they would pay me for. My fingers bled from the constant work. My eyes burned from the lack of sleep. But I did not stop. The other $5,000 I saved. Every penny I earned sewing, I saved too. We lived with the minimum. We ate beans and rice almost every day. We did not buy new clothes. We did not go out anywhere. Sarah wore the uniforms I sewed for her myself with leftover scraps. Everything, absolutely everything, went straight to a savings account. Alfred's family criticized me. They said I was driving the girl crazy with so much poverty, that we should live better, enjoy a little. But I knew what I was doing. I had a plan. For 3 years, I lived like that, working nonstop, saving every dollar possible. Sarah grew up watching her mother work until exhaustion. I explained to her 1,000 times why we lived like that. I told her I was building a future for both of us, that all this sacrifice would be worth it. She nodded, but in her eyes I saw shame. Shame of our small house. Shame of her patched clothes. Shame of having a seamstress mother. When I turned 43, I had $18,000 saved. It was then that I saw the opportunity. An old house in a modest neighborhood was for sale for $25,000. The owner needed to sell fast. It was in bad shape. It needed repairs. but I saw its potential. I asked for a loan of $7,000 using my sewing machine and my work history as collateral. The bank almost laughed at me, a seamstress widow asking for a loan, but I insisted so much that they finally accepted with very high interest rates. I bought that house, the first property of my life. I was 43 years old and finally owned something. I spent 6 months fixing it myself. I learned to paint, to repair faucets, to change outlets. I hired help only for the essentials. Every dollar mattered. When I finished, I rented it for $800 a month. After paying the loan mortgage, I had $300 of profit left. It was not much, but it was a start. I kept working on sewing. I kept saving. I kept living with the minimum. And 3 years later, I bought a second property, then a third, then a fourth. Each property I bought in bad condition, fixed it, rented it. The money from the rents I reinvested in more properties. Sarah was 17 years old when I bought the fifth house. By then, I already had a monthly income of almost $3,000 just from rents. But we kept living in the same small house. We kept watching every penny because I knew those $3,000 were our security, our future, my daughter's education. It was at that moment that I made the decision that would change everything, the decision I regret today with every fiber of my being. Sarah had been accepted into college to study law. She was brilliant, diligent, she had huge dreams. But she told me something that broke my heart. She told me she was ashamed to say her mom was a seamstress, that her classmates made fun of her, that she felt less than the others. I wanted to protect her from that pain. I wanted her to feel proud. I wanted her to have what I never had. So I did something I thought was love, but turned out to be my biggest mistake. I bought a big, beautiful house in an exclusive neighborhood. It cost $150,000. I used everything I had saved as a down payment and took out a mortgage for the rest. It was a 3-story house with a large garden near the university, a house where Sarah could receive her friends without shame. And here comes my biggest mistake, the mistake that would haunt me for years. I put the house in Sarah's name. I thought that way she would feel secure, that she would have her own assets, that her future would be guaranteed. I told her it was her house, that I had only helped her get it, that it was her reward for being such a good student. Sarah cried with happiness that day. She hugged me. She told me I was the best mother in the world, and I felt complete. I felt that all the sacrifices had been worth it. But I never told her the whole truth. I never told her that I paid the mortgage every month with the money from my rents. I never told her that I kept working in sewing to cover the expenses. I never told her that that house, although it was in her name, was the product of 20 years of my blood, my sweat, my tears. I let her believe she had achieved it by her own merit, that it was her natural reward for being smart, that success simply came to those who deserved it. And that lie I built out of love, became the monster that would devour me years later. The years in college transformed Sarah into someone I no longer recognized, or maybe she was always like that and I simply did not want to see it. Maybe the monster was always there, waiting for the perfect moment to come out. At first, everything seemed normal. Sarah studied law, got good grades, brought friends to the house. I kept working in my small sewing workshop that I had set up in the basement. I kept paying the mortgage, the utilities, the food, everything. But now I did it in silence, almost hidden, because Sarah asked me not to tell anyone I was a seamstress. "Mom, please, when my friends come over, do not mention what you work in. Say you are an investor or something like that," she told me one day with a pleading voice. I accepted. Because a mother always accepts when her daughter asks for something, even when that something is denying your own existence. Sarah's friends would arrive at the house and see me as part of the furniture. I served them coffee, prepared snacks, cleaned up after their meetings. They did not even thank me. They simply assumed I was the maid, and my daughter never corrected them. It was during her 3rd year of college when Sarah met Michael. He studied business administration at a more expensive private university. He came from a family with money, or at least they pretended to. His father had an import business that barely worked, but they lived as if they were millionaires. Michael was handsome, arrogant, and treated everyone with that typical contempt of someone who believes they were born superior. From the first day I saw him, I knew he was trouble. But Sarah was in love, or rather, she was in love with the idea of being with someone like him. "Mom, Michael comes from a very important family. His dad has incredible contacts. This can be very good for my career," she told me excitedly. I only nodded. She no longer asked for my opinion. She only informed me of her decisions. Michael began to stay at the house more frequently. First he came to study, then he stayed for dinner, then he started spending entire weekends. He never asked for permission. He never offered to help with expenses. He simply installed himself as if the house were a 5-star hotel. And the worst of all is that he treated me as if I were the servant. He asked me to make him breakfast, to wash his clothes, to iron his shirts. And when I did it, he did not even look me in the eye to say thank you. "Mrs. Emily, the shirt was ironed poorly. Can you do it again?" he would tell me with that condescending tone that made me feel small. Sarah never defended me. She never told him I was her mother, not her employee. She remained silent, smiling, happy to have a boyfriend who made her feel important. One day, Michael and his family came to dinner at the house. There were 6 people. His father, Mr. Davis, a fat man with a loud voice who talked about businesses that never worked. His mother, Linda, a thin and bitter woman who criticized everything with her gaze. His 2 brothers, just as arrogant as him. I prepared the entire dinner. I worked from 2 in the afternoon until 7 at night cooking. I made 3 different dishes, dessert, special drinks. I set the table with the nicest tablecloth I had. I lit candles. Everything perfect. When Michael's family arrived, Sarah received them in the living room as the perfect hostess. Nobody introduced me. I simply appeared from the kitchen with the plates, served them, and disappeared again, like a ghost, like someone who did not deserve to be in the same room as them. "This house is beautiful, Sarah. You must be very proud to have achieved it," Linda said while looking around with approval. "Thank you, Mrs. Linda. I have worked very hard to have all this," my daughter replied with a radiant smile. I felt something break inside me, but I said nothing. I swallowed the words. I swallowed the pain. I went back to the kitchen and washed the dishes while they laughed in the dining room. After that dinner, Michael began to bring more people to the house. Friends, college classmates, business partners. The house became his center of operations, and I became the invisible employee who kept everything running. Sarah graduated from college with honors. The ceremony was beautiful. She went up on stage, received her degree, and everyone applauded. Michael's family was there in the front row. Alfred's parents, my former in-laws, also went, but I sat way in the back, alone, in the last row of the auditorium, because Sarah told me there were not enough tickets for everyone and that it was better for me to stay in a discreet place so as not to cause problems. After graduation, there was a party at the house. Sarah invited more than 50 people. I spent 3 days preparing everything: decorations, food, drinks, music. I spent more than $2,000 of my own money that came from the rents of my properties, from my sewing, from my silent work. During the party, a colleague of Sarah's approached me in the kitchen. He was an older man, maybe 50 years old, with glasses and a kind look. "Excuse me, ma'am, are you part of the catering service?" he asked me. Before I could answer, Sarah appeared out of nowhere. "Yes, she is part of the staff. Mom, can you bring more ice, please?" She called me Mom in front of him, but in the same tone you would use to give an order to an employee. The man looked at me with pity and walked away. I went for the ice with tears in my eyes that I did not allow myself to shed. 6 months after graduating, Sarah got a job at a major law firm. She earned $3,000 a month, a good salary for someone just graduated. But she never offered to help with the house expenses. She never asked how I was doing financially. She simply assumed everything was covered by magic. Michael also got a job, although he changed jobs every 6 months because he always had problems with his bosses. According to him, nobody recognized his talent. According to him, the world was full of incompetents who did not know how to work. According to him, he deserved to be at the top without effort. But despite working, neither of them contributed a single penny to the house. I kept paying the mortgage of $4,000 a month. I kept paying the utilities that added up to another $1,000. I kept buying the food, the cleaning products, everything. They just lived. They enjoyed. They spent their money on expensive clothes, fancy restaurants, weekend trips, and I watched them spend while I ate what was left of their dinners and wore the same clothes from 10 years ago. A year later, Sarah and Michael got married. It was a huge wedding with 200 guests in an event hall that cost $30,000. I paid for everything. I sold one of my properties to cover the expenses because Sarah told me it was her special day and we could not look bad in front of Michael's family. On the wedding day, I was in the hall's kitchen during the entire reception, supervising that the food came out well, that the tables were perfect, that nothing was missing. I barely danced one song with my daughter. I barely appeared in the photos because, according to the photographer, I did not coordinate well with the color palette Sarah had chosen for the official photos. After the wedding, Michael officially moved into the house, and everything got worse. After the wedding, the house stopped being a home and became a silent battlefield where I always lost. Michael installed himself with all his things as if he were the absolute owner. He brought his furniture, his clothes, his arrogance. And my daughter allowed it all. The rules changed overnight. I could no longer use the main living room because Michael said my TV shows were boring. My room, which was previously the second largest in the house, was reassigned to become Michael's office. They moved me to the smallest room on the third floor, the one that was originally a storage room. Mom, it is just that Michael needs a professional space to work. You understand, right? Besides, you do not need so much space. With a bed and a closet, it is enough. Sarah told me as if she were doing me a favor. I accepted. I always accepted. Because I was afraid. Afraid that if I protested, my daughter would kick me out of her life forever. Afraid of being completely alone. Afraid to admit that I had raised someone incapable of loving me. But what they did not know, what nobody knew, was that I had kept something I had protected during all these years with almost obsessive care, something that now, seeing how they treated me, began to feel like my only salvation, the documents. All the original documents were kept in a safety deposit box at the bank. The deed to the house, which although it was in Sarah's name, had never been completely transferred because it lacked a final procedure that only I could authorize. The contracts of the other 4 properties that continued to produce rents and were completely in my name. The receipts of all the mortgage payments I had made for years, the proofs of bank transfers, everything. There was something else, something not even Sarah remembered. When she turned 21, I asked her to sign a document. I told her it was a legal procedure to protect the house from any fiscal problem. She signed without reading, trusting me. That document was a conditional occupancy agreement with very specific clauses. The main clause stated that the house was in her name, but under the condition that she treat me with respect and dignity while I lived. If at any time there was evidence of mistreatment, verbal abuse, or unjustified expulsion, the contract would be voided and the property would automatically revert to my name. My lawyer, Christine Moore, had helped me draft it years ago when I began to suspect something was not right. During the last 6 months, since Michael officially moved in, I had documented everything. Every insult, every humiliation, every moment of contempt. Audio recordings on my phone, photographs of offensive messages, short videos taken from discreet angles, a detailed diary with dates, times, witnesses. Christine had advised me to gather solid evidence before acting. Mrs. Emily, in cases of family abuse, especially when they involve properties, we need irrefutable proof. Legal documents are not enough. We need to demonstrate the mistreatment, she had told me, and I followed her advice to the letter. Life in that house became unbearable. Michael had taken total control of the household finances, although it was I who paid for everything. He checked the accounts. He questioned every expense I made. He demanded explanations about the money I spent on food. Emily, why did you spend $200 at the supermarket this week? That is too much. You need to learn to manage better, he would tell me in front of Sarah, who nodded as if he were right. What they did not know was that those $200 were mine. They came from my account, from my work, from my properties. But I said nothing. I only recorded every conversation on my phone that I left strategically on the kitchen table. One day, Michael organized a business meeting at the house. He invited 5 potential partners to present a project to them. He ordered me to prepare coffee and snacks for everyone. I obeyed. I prepared a beautiful tray with homemade cookies, fresh coffee, fruit. When I entered the living room to serve them, Michael introduced me. She is Emily. She lives with us. She helps us with the housework, he said, without looking at me. One of the men, an older gentleman in a gray suit, looked at me confused. Is she your housekeeper? Something like that, Michael replied with a smile. Sarah has a good heart and gives a roof to people who need it. I felt the humiliation burning inside me, but I smiled, served the coffee, and returned to the kitchen. Once there, I checked my phone. The recorder had captured everything perfectly. The humiliations became public. Sarah began to invite the extended family more frequently. Her uncles, my former brothers-in-law, came to visit her and showered her with praise. "Sarah, this house is beautiful. You are so successful, so smart. Your father would be so proud," my sister-in-law Mary would tell her every time she came. Nobody mentioned my name. Nobody asked about me. I simply appeared to serve the food and disappeared afterward, like a spirit, like someone who did not really exist. But I kept documenting. I kept saving evidence. I kept meeting secretly with Christine every 2 weeks at a coffee shop far from the house. "Mrs. Emily, this is enough to present the case. We have more than enough evidence of psychological mistreatment and emotional abuse. We can activate the clause of the contract right now," Christine told me at our last meeting before the storm. "Not yet," I replied. "I need to be completely sure. I need them to show who they really are in front of more witnesses." Christine nodded, although I saw concern in her eyes. "Just be careful. These types of situations can escalate quickly." She was right. Things escalated. 2 months before the storm, Michael called me to the living room. Sarah was sitting next to him on the sofa. Both had serious expressions. "Emily, we need to talk." Michael began with that tone he used when he wanted to sound important. I sat across from them with my hands on my lap. "Sarah and I have been thinking. This house is very big and the expenses are high. We need to optimize resources," he continued. I felt a knot in my stomach. I knew where this was going. "We have decided it is time to sell one of the properties that are in your name. The rents you receive could become liquid capital that we could invest better," he said, looking at me intently. "Which properties?" I asked, although I knew perfectly well what he was referring to. "The 4 houses you rent. We think it would be better to sell them and put that money into an investment fund that I can manage. That way we all win," he explained with a smile that did not reach his eyes. "Those properties are my livelihood. They are my retirement," I replied with a calm voice. "Mom, do not be selfish. We are trying to help you. Michael understands finances much better than you. Trust us," Sarah intervened. "I need to think about it," I said, getting up. "There's not much to think about, Emily. It is best for everyone. Tomorrow we will bring the papers for you to sign," Michael concluded. That night I called Christine and told her everything. "Under no circumstances sign anything, Mrs. Emily. This is a clear attempt at asset stripping. If you sign, you will lose everything you built for years," she warned me firmly. The next day, Michael arrived with documents, official papers, sales contracts, powers of attorney. "All ready for you to sign. We just need your signature here, here, and here," he said, pointing to the lines. "I am not going to sign," I replied calmly. Michael's face changed completely. The mask of kindness fell. "What do you mean you are not going to sign?" "I am not going to sell my properties." "Emily, do not be ridiculous. Those properties are useless to you. I'm not going to sign anything," I repeated with a firm voice, although inside I felt my legs shaking. Michael threw the documents on the table violently. The noise echoed throughout the room. Sarah, who until that moment had remained silent, stood up from the sofa with her face red with fury. "Mom, what is wrong with you? We are trying to help you and you always cause problems," she screamed with a voice I had never heard from her before. "I do not need that help," I replied, trying to stay calm. "Of course you need it. You are an old woman who knows nothing about finances. What are you going to do with those houses? Do you think you can manage them forever? You are a disaster, Mom. You always have been." My daughter's words pierced me like glass shards. Michael approached me with slow, intimidating steps. He stood in front of me, looking down at me with absolute contempt. "Listen to me well, Emily. You are going to sign those papers sooner or later, because here you have no voice and no vote. This is Sarah's house. These are our decisions, and you are just someone who lives here out of charity." His breath reached my face. "Michael, please." I tried to back away, but my back hit the wall. "Please, nothing. I am tired of your attitude, tired of you behaving as if you owned something. You own nothing. Do you hear me? Nothing." He spat the words with hate. Sarah did not stop him. She stayed standing by the sofa with her arms crossed, watching as her husband cornered me against the wall. Her silence was worse than any insult. I managed to escape to my room. I locked the door and stayed there for hours. shaking. I took out my phone and listened to the recording I had captured. Every word was recorded perfectly. Every threat, every insult. I sent the file to Christine by message. This is verbal abuse and intimidation. We can proceed legally whenever you decide, she replied in minutes. But I was not ready yet. I needed the world to see who they really were. I needed witnesses. I needed them to destroy themselves in front of everyone. The following days were constant tension. Michael did not speak to me, only looked at me with hatred every time we crossed paths in the house. Sarah had adopted the same attitude. They treated me as if I were invisible, except when they needed something. Emily, prepare dinner for 8 people. Guests are coming. Michael ordered me as if I were his employee. I obeyed. I cooked, served, cleaned, but my phone was always nearby, recording every interaction, every order, every slight. One afternoon, while I was cleaning the living room, I heard Sarah talking on the phone on the balcony. She did not know I was nearby. Yes, Aunt Mary, I do not know what to do with her anymore. Mom is becoming impossible. She does not want to cooperate with anything. Michael says maybe we should think about taking her to a nursing home, my daughter said with a casual tone, as if she were talking about the weather. I felt the world stop. A nursing home. They wanted to get rid of me completely. No, she is not sick or anything. It is just that she does not fit here anymore. The house is ours. It is our space, and she is always in the way. Besides, we need that room she uses to turn it into a gym, Sarah continued. I recorded every word. Every syllable of that conversation was saved on my phone. That night, I could not sleep. I stayed awake looking at the ceiling, thinking about how I had gotten here, how the baby I nursed, the girl I took care of when she had a fever, the young woman for whom I paid for college, had turned into this person who planned to lock me in a residence. The next morning, Michael entered the kitchen while I was making breakfast. He did not greet me. He just sat down and started checking his phone. I need you to sign these papers today, he said, throwing a yellow envelope on the table. What papers are they? I asked. A power of attorney. Sarah and I need full access to all your bank accounts to help you manage your money better. Obviously, you do not know how to do it alone, he answered without looking up from his phone. I opened the envelope. Indeed, it was a very broad power of attorney. If I signed that, they would have total control over all my assets, over my accounts, over my properties, over my entire life. I am not going to sign this, I said, leaving the envelope on the table. Michael looked up slowly. His eyes had a dangerous shine. Excuse me? That I am not going to sign it. He got up so fast that the chair fell backward with a crash. He walked toward me with clenched fists. For a moment, I thought he would hit me, but he stopped inches from my face. You are an ungrateful woman after everything Sarah has done for you. She gave you a house, a roof, food, and this is how you pay her. You are the worst kind of ingrate. His voice trembled with rage. This house is not Sarah's. The words came out of my mouth before I could stop them. There was a terrible silence. Michael looked at me as if I had said the biggest blasphemy in the world. What did you say? Nothing. Forget it. I tried to back away. No. Repeat what you said. He grabbed my arm tightly. You are hurting me. I tried to break free. Repeat it. He squeezed harder. Michael, let her go. Sarah entered the kitchen at that moment. He released me abruptly. I fell against the sink, hitting my hip. The pain was intense, but I did not scream. I was not going to give them that pleasure. Your mother just said this house is not yours. Can you believe it? She is completely crazy, Michael told Sarah. My daughter looked at me with a mixture of confusion and contempt. Mom, what are you saying? Of course this house is mine. It is in my name. Now it turns out you are inventing things. I only said that, I began to explain. That nothing. I am tired of this. Tired of your dramas, of your attitude, of everything. Sarah interrupted me. Maybe we should speed up the nursing home thing, Michael suggested. Maybe yes. Clearly Mom is starting to have mental problems. She says things that make no sense, my daughter replied. I stayed silent. I let them think whatever they wanted. But in my mind, I was already taking the final decision. It was enough. I could not take it anymore. That afternoon, while they went out to eat with friends, I called Christine. I need you to prepare everything. I want you to activate the full plan. I cannot take it anymore, I told her with a firm voice. Are you completely sure, Mrs. Emily? Once we start this, there is no turning back. They are going to try to defend themselves. "It is going to be a legal battle," she warned me. "I am sure, more sure than ever in my life." "Good. I will present the documents tomorrow early. I need you to send me all the recordings and evidence you have. Everything," Christine said with a professional tone. I spent the whole night transferring files, videos, audios, photographs, scanned documents, everything I had collected for months, every documented humiliation, every recorded insult, every photographed slight. It was 3 a.m. when I finished sending the last file. I sat on my bed and looked around that small room they had assigned me, a room that used to be a storage closet, a room where they kept things that were no longer useful, just like me to them. But they were about to discover something, that the things they believe useless are sometimes the most valuable, and that the old woman they despised had more power than they ever imagined. The event that would change everything forever happened 3 days later. Sarah had organized a birthday dinner. Not for me, of course. My birthday had passed 2 months ago without anyone remembering. This dinner was to celebrate Michael's birthday. 35 years of mediocrity that had to be celebrated as if it were the coronation of a king. Sarah invited 20 people. Michael's entire family, some friends from college, colleagues from the law firm where she worked. She even invited my in-laws, Mary and Elias, who arrived with expensive gifts and fake smiles. I passed 2 days preparing everything: decorations, food for 20 people, drinks, cake. I spent over $1,000 of my own money that came from the rents of my properties, those properties they wanted me to sell. The afternoon of the dinner, while I was finishing cooking, Sarah entered the kitchen in an elegant dress. She looked beautiful. For a moment, I saw the girl she was. The girl who hugged me and told me I was her hero, but that girl no longer existed. "Mom, when the guests arrive, I want you to stay in the kitchen. I do not want you walking around interrupting conversations," she told me without looking me in the eye. "I cannot even say hello?" I asked with a lump in my throat. "It is better if you do not. People come to have a good time, not to deal with awkward situations," she replied, adjusting her necklace. "Awkward situations? I am your mother, Sarah. I know, Mom, but I also know that lately you have been weird, saying strange things. I do not want you to embarrass Michael on his birthday," she said, and left the kitchen before I could answer. I stood there, my hands trembling over the sink. I breathed deeply. I took out my phone and placed it in a strategic spot in the kitchen, recording. Then I put another small phone, an old one I had bought specifically for this, hidden in the living room with a full view of the dining room. The guests began to arrive. I heard their voices from the kitchen. Laughter, greetings, congratulations for Michael. I served the plates, took them to the dining room, and returned without anyone saying a word to me. It was like a ghost serving ghosts. At one moment, Mary, my sister-in-law, entered the kitchen supposedly to look for more wine. "Emily, so nice to see you. You almost do not come out to say hello," she said with that sweet and poisonous voice she always used. "Sarah prefers that I stay here," I replied, without turning to look at her. "Ah, I understand. Well, it is her house. She makes the rules," she said, pouring herself wine. "By the way, she told me you are having some little problems. You know, memory issues, age things." I turned to look at her. She was smiling smugly. "I do not have any memory problems." Sure. That is what they all say at the beginning. My mom also denied she was bad before we had to commit her. "It was very sad but necessary," she said, taking a sip of wine. "Sarah is doing the right thing by taking care of you. She is an exemplary daughter." She left the kitchen, leaving me with my blood boiling. Now I understood everything. Sarah was preparing the ground with the family, making them believe I was losing my mind. So when they decided to lock me up somewhere, nobody would ask questions. But she did not know that every word of that conversation had been recorded. The dinner went on between laughter and toasts. From the kitchen, I heard how everyone congratulated Michael on his success, on his intelligence, on his bright future. Nobody mentioned he had changed jobs 4 times in 2 years. Nobody mentioned that Sarah was the one who actually paid all the bills with her salary. When the time came for the cake, Sarah called me. "Mom, bring the cake." I carried it carefully. It was a 3-tier cake that had taken me hours to decorate. I placed it in the center of the table. Everyone began to sing happy birthday. Michael blew out the candles with a smile from ear to ear. I stood to one side, waiting to be able to return to the kitchen. But then Mr. Davis, Michael's father, raised his glass. "I want to make a toast to my son for his success, for his beautiful wife, and for this magnificent house they have built together. They are the perfect example of what can be achieved with hard work and dedication, he said with a strong voice. Everyone raised their glasses, everyone toasted, and something inside me broke definitively. They did not build this house. The words came out of my mouth before I could stop them. The silence was immediate. Everyone looked at me as if I had said something obscene. Michael put his glass on the table slowly. Sarah looked at me with huge eyes, red with shame and fury. "Mom, shut up," she whispered through her teeth, but I did not shut up. Something inside me had been released. 20 years of silence exploding in a single moment. I built this house. With my work, with my money. After Sarah's father died and left me alone with an 11-year-old girl, my voice trembled, but I did not stop. "Emily, enough," said Michael, standing up from his chair. "I worked 3 jobs for years. I saved every penny. I bought properties. I fixed them with my own hands, and I bought this house to give my daughter a future. All this is my work, not hers. Mine." I felt the tears rolling down my cheeks, but I did not care. Sarah stood up so fast her chair fell backward. "How dare you? How dare you ruin this night with your lies?" she screamed with her face deformed by rage. "They are not lies." "Yes, they are. This house is in my name. It is mine. I got it. I worked to have it." She kept screaming while the guests looked at us uncomfortably. "You put it in your name because I asked you to, but I paid for it. Every monthly payment, every utility, everything." My voice was firmer now. Michael walked toward me with furious steps. He grabbed my arm violently. "Listen to me well, crazy old woman. You are going to go up to your room right now and you are going to stay quiet. You have caused enough damage." He was dragging me toward the stairs. "Let me go." I tried to break free. "Michael, get her out of here. I do not want to see her anymore," Sarah screamed. Some guests began to murmur. Mary stood up as if she were going to intervene, but Elias stopped her. Mr. Davis watched the scene with a cruel smile, enjoying the show. Michael dragged me to the front door. He opened the door with a slam. Outside, it had started to rain. A storm was approaching. The sky was dark and the wind blew hard. "Get out now or I am calling the police," Sarah screamed from the dining room. "Sarah, please," I begged. "I want you to leave. I do not want to see you here anymore. This house is mine. Do you understand? Mine. You have nothing. Nothing." Her voice was pure hysteria. Michael ran up to my room. I heard noises, drawers opening, things being thrown. He came down with my few belongings in his arms. My clothes, my shoes, some personal objects. He threw everything out the door into the yard where the rain was beginning to fall harder. "No, please, it is raining," I screamed. But he did not stop. He kept going up and down, emptying my entire room. Every piece of clothing ended up in the mud. My shoes, my sweaters, the few photographs I kept, everything being destroyed under the rain that now fell with violence. The neighbors began to come out. Brenda, the lady from across the street, was at her window with her hands on her mouth. Mr. Wilson from number 14 was recording everything with his phone from his porch. Other neighbors opened their doors, looked, but nobody did anything. The dinner guests came out too, attracted by the scandal. They stayed on the porch, undercover, watching how they expelled me under the storm as if I were garbage. I began to pick up my soaked things. My hands shook from the cold and shock. The rain soaked me to the bone. My clothes stuck to my body. I could barely see through the water running down my face. Michael took out his phone and started filming me. He was laughing. That cruel, mocking, inhumane laugh. Michael's laugh echoed above the sound of the rain. He filmed me while I picked up my belongings from the mud, as if my humiliation were the best entertainment in the world. The guests remained on the porch, some with wine glasses still in their hands, watching the show without doing anything. "Look at the crazy woman. She says the house is hers," Michael shouted toward the guests, provoking some nervous laughter. Sarah was standing in the door with her arms crossed, her face hard as stone. There was not a shred of doubt in her eyes. There was no remorse, only pure contempt. I managed to put what I could into 2 plastic bags I found by the fence. Most of my clothes were ruined. The water kept falling with such force that I could barely keep my eyes open. My shoes splashed in the mud puddles. When I finished picking up the last thing, I turned toward the house one more time. Toward that house I had bought with 20 years of work. Toward my daughter who looked at me as if I were an undesirable stranger. Toward all those witnesses who would never forget this night. And then I did the same thing I had done 3 days ago. I smiled, a calm, serene, almost sweet smile. "No problem," I said with a clear voice despite the rain. Sarah frowned. She did not expect that reaction. She expected tears. She expected me to crumble, to beg. But I simply took my bags and began to walk under the storm. "And do not come back," Michael screamed behind me. "This house is Sarah's. It always was. You are nobody here." I did not turn back. I did not answer. I simply kept walking to the corner where I hailed the same taxi as the previous time. The driver recognized me. "Ma'am, again? What is happening?" he asked with genuine concern. "Just take me to the hotel, please," I replied with a tired voice. During the ride, I took out my phone. I had several messages from Christine. She had seen the news of the storm and was worried. I wrote her a simple message: "Activate it all, now." Her response arrived in seconds. "Understood. The documents are already presented to the judge. The order should be ready tomorrow morning. Are you okay?" "I will be okay when this ends," I replied. I arrived at the hotel soaked, shivering, exhausted. The receptionist looked at me with pity but asked no questions. I went up to the room and dropped the wet bags on the floor. I took off the soaked clothes and got under the hot shower. The warm water ran down my body while I processed what had just happened. The public humiliation, the laughter, the witnesses. Everything had been recorded not only by Michael, but also by Mr. Wilson and probably other neighbors. My humiliation was documented forever, but they did not know that was exactly what I needed. Witnesses, public evidence, irrefutable proof of the mistreatment. Now it was not just my word against theirs. Now the whole world had seen who they really were. I got out of the shower and checked my phone. The 2 devices I had left recording in the house had captured everything. Every insult, every scream, the violence with which Michael dragged me, Sarah's words. Everything was there, in high-quality video. I sent all the files to Christine. She called me immediately. "Mrs. Emily, this is legal gold. With these recordings, plus the testimonies of the neighbors who witnessed everything, plus the occupancy contract Sarah signed, plus the original property documents, the case is absolutely solid." Her voice sounded excited, professional. "How long will it take?" I asked. "The judge already reviewed the preliminary documents this afternoon. He is outraged. He told me he is going to issue the order tonight. Tomorrow first thing, the police will go to the house with a temporary eviction order and notification of asset fraud," she explained. "Asset fraud?" "Yes. Sarah has been living in a property that legally remains under her control through the conditional contract. That contract clearly specified that the condition for her to maintain the use of the property was to treat it, and you, with respect and dignity. She violated that contract flagrantly and publicly. Besides, the attempt to make you sign powers of attorney under duress constitutes attempted asset stripping. They are serious crimes." Christine's voice was firm. I felt something loosen in my chest. After so many years enduring, after so much silent pain, finally someone was defending me. Someone was fighting for me. "And the other properties?" I asked. "Those are completely in your name and always have been. Nobody can touch them. In fact, the income from those properties proves that you have been financially independent all this time. That strengthens the case even more," she replied. "What will happen tomorrow exactly?" "The police will arrive with a court order. They will notify Sarah and Michael that they must vacate the property temporarily while the case is resolved. They will be informed that there is an open investigation for elder abuse and attempted asset fraud. The original property documents will be presented, and the truth will come out in front of everyone who was present tonight," Christine explained with satisfaction in her voice. "Can I be there?" "Not only can you, you must be there. You are the complainant and the legitimate owner. The police will escort you back to your house. To your house, Mrs. Emily, because that is what it is. Your house." Christine's words made me cry. I cried for hours that night. I cried for the lost years, for the daughter I thought I had and who never really existed, for the love I gave without receiving anything in return, for all the times I swallowed my pride and accepted crumbs. But I also cried of relief because finally, after so long being invisible, someone saw me, someone recognized my pain, someone defended me. At 6 a.m, my phone rang. It was Christine. "The order is ready. The police will pick you up at the hotel at 9 o'clock sharp. Get ready, Mrs. Emily. Today your new life begins," she said. I got up, showered, put on the best clothes I had managed to save from the storm. I looked in the mirror. I was 61 years old. Wrinkles around the eyes, gray hair, hands marked by years of work. But for the first time in a long time, I really saw myself. I saw a strong woman, a survivor, a fighter. At 9 o'clock exact, 2 patrol cars parked in front of the hotel. I went down with my small bag. Christine was there too, with her briefcase full of documents. She hugged me. "Ready?" she asked. "More than ready," I replied. The ride to the house was silent. I looked out the window, watching the streets I knew so well pass by. The streets where I had worked for years, where I had built my life, where I had raised my daughter. When we arrived at the house, there were already several neighbors outside. The news of what had happened the night before had spread. Brenda was in her garden pretending to water the plants, but clearly waiting to see what happened. Mr. Wilson was on his porch with his coffee, observing. Other neighbors peeked through the windows. The police officers got out first. There were 4 officers, 2 men, 2 women, all with serious expressions. The senior officer, a man of about 50 with gray hair, approached me. "Mrs. Emily Ross?" he asked with respect. "Yes, that is me," I replied. "We have a temporary eviction court order and notification of investigation. Are you ready to proceed?" I looked toward the house. The living room curtains moved slightly. I knew Sarah and Michael were inside. Probably they had seen the patrol cars. Probably they were terrified, wondering what was happening. "I am ready," I said with a firm voice. The 4 officers walked toward the front door. Christine and I followed them. The officer knocked on the door loudly. "Police, open the door." There was silence for a few seconds. Then we heard hurried steps. The door opened. Michael appeared disheveled, in pajamas, with eyes of not having slept well. What is happening, officers?" he stammered. "Michael Davis?" asked the officer. "Yes. And Sarah Ross? She is inside. What is going on?" "We have a court order. Allow us to enter," said the officer, pushing the door gently but with authority. They entered. I entered behind them. Sarah was on the stairs, also in pajamas, with a pale face. When she saw me, her eyes opened huge. "Mom, what are you doing here? What is all this?" Sarah's voice sounded sharp, nervous, almost childish. I did not answer. I let the officers speak. I let the law do its work. The senior officer took some documents out of a manila envelope and began to read with a clear and authoritative voice. "Sarah Ross and Michael Davis, we have a court order issued by Judge Marquez of the Civil Court. You are notified that there is an open investigation against you for elder abuse, attempted asset stripping, and violation of the conditional occupancy agreement." The officer's voice resonated throughout the house. "What? No, there has to be a mistake." Michael tried to approach, but another officer stopped him with a gesture. "There is no mistake. This property, located at 243 Pine Avenue, is registered under a conditional contract in the name of Sarah Ross, but with specific clauses of conditioned use. The legal owner and original title holder is Mrs. Emily Ross," the officer continued. Sarah grabbed the stair railing. Her face went from pale to intense red. "That cannot be. This house is mine. It is in my name. I have the papers." Her voice was beginning to break. Christine took a step forward, opened her briefcase, and took out several documents. "You have papers of a conditional agreement you signed 7 years ago, a contract that allowed you to live in this property under specific conditions of respect and dignity towards Mrs. Emily Ross. You violated that contract flagrantly. We have video evidence of the violent expulsion that you and your husband executed last night under the storm." Christine's voice was professional, cold, devastating. "That is a lie. She was causing problems. She was saying crazy things in front of our guests." Michael shouted. "Crazy things? Telling the truth is craziness?" asked Christine, taking out more documents. "We have the bank records of the last 20 years. Every mortgage payment of this house was made by Mrs. Emily from her personal account. Every utility, every repair, every expense, all paid by her." "No, that cannot be." Sarah came down the stairs, stumbling. "I paid my part. I worked." "You worked, yes, but you spent your salary on yourself, on your clothes, your trips, your restaurants. You never contributed a single penny to this house." Christine placed bank statements on the living room table. "Here are the proofs. 20 years of bank transfers from Mrs. Emily's accounts." Michael approached the table and began to review the documents with trembling hands. I could see how his face changed as he read. Arrogance turned into confusion, confusion into shock, shock into panic. "Furthermore," continued the officer, "we have multiple audio and video recordings where you two threaten, insult, and coerce Mrs. Emily to sign transfer documents of her other properties. That constitutes attempted asset fraud." "Recordings? What recordings?" asked Sarah with a weak voice. Christine took out her tablet and played one of the videos. It was the scene in the kitchen where Michael cornered me against the wall, shouting at me that I owned nothing. The audio was perfectly clear. "Listen to me well, Emily. You are going to sign those papers sooner or later, because here you have no voice and no vote. This is Sarah's house. These are our decisions, and you are just someone who lives here out of charity." Michael's voice coming out of the tablet sounded even more cruel and ruthless. Sarah put her hands to her mouth. Tears began to roll down her cheeks. "We have 17 similar recordings," said Christine, turning off the video, "all with threats, coercions, and insults. And we have the video from last night, filmed by multiple witnesses, where you expelled Mrs. Emily under a storm, throwing her belongings into the mud, laughing at her suffering." By that moment, more neighbors had approached the open door. Brenda was there, with her hands on her chest. Mr. Wilson, too. Mrs. Lydia from number 20. Other 5 or 6 more neighbors, all listening, all watching as the truth came to light. "Therefore," continued the senior officer, "you are ordered to vacate this property temporarily while the legal investigation proceeds. You have 2 hours to collect your essential belongings. The rest of your things will remain in the property under custody until the judge determines the final resolution." "You cannot do this. This is my house," screamed Sarah hysterically. "I live here. I grew up here." "This house legally belongs to Mrs. Emily Ross," the officer replied firmly. "You lived here under a conditional permit that you violated. Now you must leave." Michael exploded. His face turned red with fury. "This is absurd. It is a conspiracy. This manipulative old woman set a trap for us." He pointed at me with his finger. I took a step forward. It was the first time I spoke since I had entered the house. "It was not a trap, Michael. It was justice. For years you humiliated me, despised me, treated me like garbage. You assumed that because I was old, because I was quiet, because I loved you, I was stupid. But I was not. I was just documenting every one of your abuses, waiting for the right moment." My voice was calm but firm. "How could you do this to us?" sobbed Sarah. "I am your daughter, and you are my mother, but you treated me worse than an employee," I replied, feeling something break inside me. "You made me invisible. You denied my existence in front of your friends. You tried to steal what I built with 20 years of work. You threw me onto the street under the storm, and you asked me how I could do this to you." Tears ran down my face, but my voice did not tremble. "I gave you everything, my youth, my strength, my entire life. I worked until I bled so you would have a future, and you paid me with contempt. But I did not know," Sarah tried to say. "You did not know because you never asked. You never cared to know. You assumed everything you had was by your own merit, that your success was only yours, that I was just a hindrance you endured out of pity." I interrupted her. The silence in the room was absolute. The officers looked at us with expressions mixing professionalism with humanity. The neighbors at the door dared not even breathe loudly. "You have 2 hours," repeated the officer. "Collect your things and leave. If you do not do it voluntarily, we will proceed to escort you by force." Michael tried to protest one more time, but another officer took him by the arm firmly. "Sir, I suggest you cooperate. You already have enough charges against you. Do not add resistance to authority." Sarah ran up the stairs sobbing. Michael followed her, casting glances of pure hate at me. We heard them on the second floor, opening drawers, throwing things, arguing between them. Christine approached me and put her hand on my shoulder. "It is okay, Mrs. Emily." I nodded, although I was shaking from head to toe. It was not easy. None of this was easy, but it was necessary. The neighbors began to enter little by little. Brenda approached me with tears in her eyes. "Mrs. Emily, I did not know. If I had known the truth, I would have done something. What they did to you last night was terrible. We all saw it," she said, taking my hand. Mr. Wilson also approached. "I have the complete video from last night. If you need it for the case, I can give it to you. What they did to you has no name." One by one, the neighbors introduced themselves. They offered testimonies. They offered support. They offered apologies for not having intervened before. The community that had been a silent witness to my humiliation now became my support network. 40 minutes later, Sarah and Michael came down with 4 large suitcases. Their faces were swollen from crying so much. Michael remained furious but defeated. Sarah could not even look me in the eye. When they reached the door, Sarah stopped. She turned toward me. For a moment, I saw a flash of the girl she was. "Mom, she began to say. "No," I interrupted her. "You have nothing to say to me now. You had years to tell me you loved me, years to treat me with respect, years to thank me for what I did for you. You chose not to do it. You chose to humiliate me. Now live with that choice." Sarah left the house crying. Michael followed her, dragging the suitcases with contained fury. The neighbors watched them leave in silence. Nobody offered them help. Nobody showed them sympathy. The truth had come to light, and now everyone knew who they really were. When the patrol cars left and the house was finally empty, I stood in the middle of the living room. My living room, my house. The place I had built with 20 years of sacrifice and almost lost for misunderstood love. Christine stayed with me that afternoon, helping me process everything. She explained the next legal steps, the deadlines, the hearings, but she also sat with me on the sofa and simply let me cry. Because although I had won, although I had recovered my dignity, the pain was still there. The pain of knowing that my own daughter had betrayed me in the cruelest way possible. 3 days later, Sarah tried to call me. I did not answer. She sent me messages. I deleted them without reading. Michael tried to approach the house, but the security officers I had temporarily hired for the property kept him away. They were desperate. They had lost everything in a matter of hours. A week later, I received a call from Mary, my sister-in-law. Her voice sounded different, humble, regretful. "Emily, I need to ask for your forgiveness. Sarah lied to us all. She made us believe you were losing your mind, that the house was hers, that you lived off her charity. We did not know the truth. If we had known," she sobbed on the other end of the line. "Would you have done anything differently?" I asked with a tired voice. There was a long silence. "I do not know, but I should have asked. I should have investigated. I am sorry," she replied. I accepted her apologies, but I did not forget. The damage was done. The family that should have protected me had abandoned me because it was easier to believe the successful young woman than the invisible old woman. 2 weeks later, the court hearing took place. Judge Marquez reviewed all the evidence. The videos, the recordings, the financial documents, the neighbors' testimonies. His verdict was clear and forceful. The house returned completely to my name. The conditional agreement was voided for violation of its clauses. Sarah and Michael had to pay compensation of $50,000 for emotional damages and mistreatment. Furthermore, they were forbidden from approaching me for 2 years. But the most important thing, what really changed everything, was what the judge said at the end of the hearing. This case represents one of the most painful injustices I have seen in my career. A mother who sacrificed her entire life for her daughter, only to be discarded like garbage when she was no longer convenient. Mrs. Emily Ross not only has the right to recover her property, she has the right to recover her dignity, and this court officially returns it to her today. His words resonated throughout the courtroom. Sarah did not attend the hearing. She sent a lawyer who tried to negotiate, but there was nothing to negotiate. The facts were irrefutable. Michael was present, sitting at the back of the room with a composed face. When the judge read the verdict, he ran out without saying a word. After the hearing, Christine and I went to a small cafe near the courthouse. We ordered hot tea and sat by the window. "What do you plan to do now, Mrs. Emily?" she asked me. I had thought a lot about that question during the last few weeks. I had spent entire nights awake, reflecting on my life, on the decisions I made, on the future I had left. "I am going to do something good with all this," I finally replied, and that was exactly what I did. Using the money from the rents of my properties, plus the compensation Sarah and Michael had to pay me, I created a project that had been gestating in my mind for years, a foundation for older women in vulnerable situations. I converted 2 of my properties into temporary homes for women over 60 who had been abandoned or mistreated by their families. I offered them a roof, food, legal support, and above all, dignity, a place where they could rebuild themselves without being judged, without being invisible. The first woman to arrive was Linda, a 67-year-old lady who had been kicked out by her son after selling her house to pay for his college. Her story was painfully similar to mine. She cried for hours the day she arrived. She could not believe someone was helping her without asking for anything in return. "Why are you doing this for me?" she asked through tears. "Because I know what it feels like to be invisible, and nobody deserves to feel that way," I replied, hugging her. In 6 months, I had helped 12 women, each with her own story of family betrayal, of abuse, of abandonment, each seeking to recover the dignity that had been stolen from them. And I was there to help them, because finally I had found my purpose. The big house, the one that had caused so much pain, I kept, but I no longer lived alone in it. I hired Brenda, my neighbor, as the project manager. Mr. Wilson volunteered to do repairs. Other neighbors donated food, clothes, time. The community that had been a witness to my humiliation was now part of my redemption. Sarah tried to contact me several times during that first year. Long letters asking for forgiveness, crying voice messages. She even tried to show up at the house once, but the security officer I had hired did not let her pass. Michael, on the other hand, disappeared. According to what I heard, they divorced 3 months after the trial. She blamed him for everything. He blamed her. The truth is that both were equally responsible. One day, exactly 1 year after that storm, I received a certified letter. It was from Sarah. I did not open it immediately. I left it on the table for 2 days, looking at it, wondering if I wanted to know what it said. Finally, I opened it. It was different from the other letters. There were no pleas or excuses, only honest and painful words. "Mom, I know I do not deserve your forgiveness. I know what I did to you has no justification. I have spent this year in therapy trying to understand how I became the person I was. How could I be so cruel to the woman who gave me everything? I have no answer. I only know I was so obsessed with appearing successful, with showing the world I was important, that I lost sight of what really mattered. I lost sight of love. I lost sight of gratitude. I lost you. I do not ask you to forgive me. I do not ask you to come back into my life. I only want you to know that I finally understood. I understood that everything I am, everything I have, everything I achieved was thanks to you, and that I destroyed that out of pride and stupidity. I hope one day I can be half the woman you are. I love you even if I no longer have the right to tell you. Sarah." I read the letter 3 times. I cried with every reading, because despite everything, despite the pain and betrayal, she was still my daughter, and a mother's love is not erased, even if it breaks, even if it hurts, even if everything seems lost. I did not answer the letter, not yet. Maybe one day, maybe when time has healed the deepest wounds, maybe when I can look at her without feeling the pain of that night under the storm. But that day had not arrived yet. In the meantime, I moved forward with my life, with my project, with my purpose. Every woman I helped was a small victory against injustice. Every smile I managed to get from them was proof that dignity can be recovered, that it is never too late to defend yourself, that being old does not mean being useless or invisible. On my 62nd birthday, the 12 women of the project organized a surprise party for me. They decorated the house with flowers, cooked my favorite food, sang happy birthday to me. Linda gave me a painting she had painted. It was a portrait of me, but not as I saw myself in the mirror. She painted me as she saw me, strong, dignified, beautiful. You saved us all, she said with tears in her eyes. You gave us our lives back. No, I replied, hugging her. You saved me. You showed me there is still goodness in this world, that it is still worth fighting for. That night, alone in my room, I looked out the window toward the garden where once my clothes were thrown into the mud, where once I was humiliated in front of everyone. That garden was now full of flowers that Linda and the other women had planted, flowers growing where before there was only pain, and I understood something important. Sometimes life strips you of everything to teach you who you really are. Sometimes you have to lose everything to find your true value. Sometimes the most violent storm is necessary to clear the path toward your true life. I was Emily Ross. I was 62 years old. I was a mother, even if my daughter had betrayed me. I was a strong woman, even if the world tried to make me feel weak. I was an owner, an investor, a fighter, a survivor. But above all, I was worthy, and that dignity nobody, absolutely nobody, could ever take away from me again. If you are reading this and you feel invisible, if your family despises you, if they believe that because you are older you are worth nothing, I want you to know something. You have power, more power than you think. Do not let anyone take away your dignity. Do not let anyone make you feel you do not deserve respect, because you deserve it. You deserve it all. And if you need help, seek it. Document the abuses. Keep the evidence. Find people who defend you. Justice exists. Dignity can be recovered. And it is never, never too late to defend what is yours. This is my story. The story of how my daughter threw my clothes in the rain until she discovered that the house actually never was hers. It was mine. It was always mine. And now, finally, the whole world knows it.